Welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions. It is Tuesday, May 13th. We've had, well, it's Tuesday. We're back at work. We have with us today the Commissioner of BGS following up on a field trip that this committee took. Is that last week? That was last week, right?
Yes.
To the Waterbury Complex. That's a new complex that was replaced after we lost the whole complex back in Irene, bought up Irene back in 2011. We rebuilt the complex in 2012, 13, 14, to house about 850 folks. And back then, part of the thinking was there was at least 1,000 to 1,200 folks that were employed through the Agency of Human Services. And back then, we built it for about 850. It was in the mid 800s.
750.
750, so it got
750.
down a little bit.
Mhm.
Thinking that folks would be telecommuting. That was the terminology back then. So that facility was really full when we reopened it. And then a few years later comes COVID and Zoom and electronic meetings, and that just took off. So what's happening within our workforce today, what's happening in our workforce to date right now is a lot of folks are working electronically from home. And it's really looking at office space. So when we took the trip up last week for the complex, it seemed like there was a lot of empty space. And the committee was really interested in having a conversation about how do we move forward here. And I don't know, Sean, if you want to, because you were instigating some of this, so I don't know if you want to say anything. Go for it.
Well, it was just, and I think I speak for everyone in the committee. We were scratching our heads a little bit as we walked through a beautiful building, gorgeous, where the forensics lab is, the emergency setup that's there, and then we walked through. Everything had been redone, and there were people in, DOC definitely took up some space, but we walked through many hallways, and I would, I think all of us were really scratching our heads about, how much space there is. So we were just, and we don't there, and there were a few people there who corresponded with us that were like, well, there are times when there's more people here, but now's, but we heard some conflicting things. So we were just really interested in finding out how much of that building is actually used, if there's any thoughts of maybe moving another one of our departments over there, because we do own it and it's new and it's beautiful. So that's why we really wanted to chat.
So I really appreciate,
Identify yourself.
thank you. Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. I appreciate this conversation. There's a couple of things, just to help set the stage that Chair Emmons did. We did pre-Irene have, when you remember the building, there were probably over 1,000 employees that were located on that campus. You got to look at that campus almost like the Montpelier campus, because we had the A&R lab and ag lab. That building got demolished. We had a workshop for BGS. We had public safety. So
State hospital.
and we had the state hospital. There were multiple uses. So in the rebuild, it's currently the main building has a seating capacity of about 750. But when you talk about 850, you got to go to the other buildings that are on the property. So we have the BGS heat plant and maintenance shop. You have the forensic lab, you have the state police. So you have those outer spaces as well.
Is anything in Hanks and Weeks at this point? Those were empty for a while. They're small.
So I believe I'm gonna get back to you on that because I feel like I'm gonna get back to you on that.
Because one of them is very, very small. I don't remember.
And I think that one we ended up not doing a whole lot with, and I believe
Maybe it's
BGS may have maybe did a demolition. I'm not sure. So I'll get back to you on that. So to your question, I think where I'd like to say is, as Commissioner of Buildings and General Services and coming in October and setting some strategies with the Secretary of Administration and looking at, all of the impact in Montpelier and the buildings and reuse and FEMA and everything that we're doing. Different environment, but same and similar to Waterbury. And it's really the planning and the strategy around that. When you proposed the language, that, was where you would propose language, I think it might have been H50, where we were saying, take some of the space, give it to, can we use it for housing? I think we remember that discussion.
Yeah.
And I asked the committee to, pause and give BGS time, to really look at utilization. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And so I think that discussion took place in January or February. We continue. I'm not just looking at Waterbury and Montpelier, I'm looking at statewide. I'm looking, under the direction of the Secretary of Administration. She and I have had a lot of conversations, because what does Montpelier look like in the future? What happens with some of those spaces? How does that have an overflow to Waterbury? How does the teleworking policy really relook at our space utilization and our rules around that? How does our lease space, budgetary, because it is more cost effective for us to be in state-owned space than it is to be in lease space. What's our inventory on lease? How is that being utilized? So all of those layers are being talked about. It's something that we're not going to have complete in 2 weeks.
Right.
I hope we are, I think the discussion on moving forward within the Capitol complex those properties are going to have to play into that. And one of the things, we're looking at we've been doing some site visits of all of the property. We're collecting data. And I remember my first time sitting here and I'm looking at you, it's like data helps lead the conversation. We don't have all of the data. We need to continue what are the standards? What are the best practices? We're not the only state that is doing teleworking. And Madam Chair, I know and members of the committee, but when we did school construction, we'd look at a school and we'd say, you have 100 students today. What do you anticipate in the next 10 years to be the capacity of your school? And we would try to build for that larger capacity so we weren't coming back. We've done that with state government, not in the way that we did school construction, but when you build a building, what's your programming? What's your desire? Where's your growth? And we're almost on the reverse of that now. And we have to look at, what did we build it for? What is the utilization? How does your teleworking policy roll into your program? Because we have a generic, I don't want to say generic, but we have a policy, but every department manages it differently. Some require full-time, because of who you're serving and your customer. Some you telework 2 days a week. They rotate the employees, so you might have 100 employees, but they're not all there on the same day. You may rotate those days. So we've got to be able to get that data and overlay it on the space. And also, what is that number? With our teleworking today, and I'm just I'm just sharing the things we're thinking about. Is it 60%? Is it 70%? Because we used to build and occupy for your FTEs. So every department, this is your full-time equivalent. This is a space. When a new program was added to a department and 5 new positions were added, then you needed 5 more spaces. That doesn't exist anymore, right? And so that's the data. And we're doing site visits. We're looking at badge data. We're looking at audits of site visits. We're looking sort of getting an overall understanding of the teleworking policy. And what's key to operations, what's public facing programs, because we as government, there are programs we have to do in person. We're still gonna have to do those. Some people may agree with that or may not, but that's there. So to your question and your observation, yes, the utilization of Waterbury looks different today, and you experienced it. And yes, we are very aware of that, but we have to look at it, I think, bigger and broader in the overall planning, and we are doing that.
And Kevin?
You gave a long list of data that would be helpful in making those decisions.
Yeah.
The risk of being the bad guy, I think there's one big piece we don't ever seem to hear from us government people. How can we get more from less? Are we more efficient when we have people on site regularly being tasked as opposed to being individually out there doing our things? Are you as a manager, as the commissioner, satisfied that you're getting the most you can out of your team, utilizing the money that's being spent? That's the first thing that I think you really need to look at, rather than, is this what everybody likes? Because everybody likes flexibility, but we don't have enough money to do what we need to, much less what we want to do. So where can we find more money by using what we have more efficiently? That, I think, is, and I don't know how you get a handle on that other than querying all of your managers to say, hey, what can we do to get more?
So I can speak about my department.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing, having an understanding. The commissioner of HR did come in, I believe, early in the session and talk to you about the overall policy. Within my department, our teleworking is working, but you must remember our custodians, our maintenance people, are individuals who have to be on the job to do the work. That's 70% of my staff. Our project managers, some of them telework 2 days a week. Those project managers, the majority of their time are out on a construction site. So we're still getting the same work, but every department is different. Utilization of space and how we're setting ourselves up for the future and what our needs are really comes down to, do you gain efficiencies with potentially I'm not saying that this is what we're doing, but part of your evaluation, I said, leases cost more than state owned. Our fee for space program is more affordable. Do you, if you are not utilizing the space, how do you consolidate? Where do you consolidate? Where can you become more efficient? Which does have a direct impact on fee for space and on budgets.
Right.
So there will be efficiencies from at least that planning standpoint as we look at all of that. But regarding how departments operate and how they're managing their teleworking policy, we have to, I can't answer that. The administration has to say, here's the standard, this is what it's based on. And then departments have to manage within that.
Right.
I think that's.
No, and I agree with you, but I'm just pointing out that if the past 20 years, you were able to accomplish 20 projects at the tune of $50 million, but now you have twice as many people doing, and you're still getting 20 projects done. Is
Yeah,
that
I wish
because
we
we're-
had twice as many
Well,
people.
you know what I mean? Well, and I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying that to me is a metric
Yeah.
that the profit world does every year,
Right,
where the government doesn't generally do that.
right.
So that's
Yeah, and
my-
I think that's something that you have to continue having conversations. I will not, that evaluation does not necessarily belong in the planning world, but I hear you.
I mean, I'll bet you Joe doesn't have any extra technicians just hanging around. Because that's profit out of his pocket.
But Wanda, you don't have control over other departments and agencies.
No,
Just
no,
are looking within Department of Buildings and General.
that's right.
So who, because every department is different.
Right.
Every department has a commissioner.
Right.
And every commissioner answers to the secretary of that
There's,
agency.
yeah,
So who really, you get information from those departments and agencies. But who in state government is really looking at the overall use of our office space and trying to figure how we go forward? Is that all coming into Department of Buildings and General Services from the respective department and agencies, or are they all doing it independently?
so it is being, it's, the Secretary of Administration has oversight. I'm one of her commissioners, just like HR is under her. So as regarding the space, we're working on that. The policy on teleworking exists. One of the examples that I was saying to Representative Sweeney is that, once you have these standards, then you have to add that layer of data of what is your teleworking policy? How does it impact your space? So that will,
That's by department.
right, but we, more than likely, I'm just making, I would see BGS completing its analysis over this time. And then you layer that on top of it. That's one approach, but we, most importantly, I'm just going to take a pause. I think in statute and we have in place, we have design standards. This committee a long time ago said, come up with design standards. And so it was square footage per person, it was desk per person. And, so I'm going to use that as within that design standard, we need to blend in what does state space look like with its teleworking policy? How do you utilize state space? What is the capacity that you need? And that's what we're working on. That's what we're looking at. But I think most importantly, your observations that you made in Waterbury, you would see same or similar depending on the day, depending on the program throughout the state. And we are conscious of that. We are well aware of that. And we are trying to take a holistic view of it.
And
I don't
Right.
need language to do the study.
No, we're not, we know that. And I think that I get it. You said that earlier in the session. You're just wrapping your brain around the whole thing.
Yes.
It was just, just me being a little spatial, just enough to get, myself in trouble. I was walking through there and I'm thinking to myself, and I wanted to ask you this question National Life, does Vermont own National Life?
So no,
do we own
we
that
lease, no, we lease, I think it's called, there's the Dewey and the Davis, and I don't know where those names came up. They didn't come up from us, but basically, when you look at National Life, the addition that's connected to the parking garage, that's the best way I can describe it. We lease space within there, and then the building that's out behind that stands alone, we also lease that space.
Okay, so, and just out of curiosity, do you know how many people are in there? Just give me a guess. 50?
I don't know.
100?
So we have the Agency of Natural Resources, we have the Agency of Education, we have Forest Parks and, not Forest Park, we have Fish and Wildlife, we have ADS. So I know the programs, that's another one of, so not, as I said, we're not only looking at our state, we're looking at our lease.
Right.
We're going to apply the same methodology in looking at those.
There's got to be, just in my common sensey approach to, there's got to be people that are up there that could go to Waterbury.
So-
That's the way I look at it, but I might be absolutely wrong. But I want to say it
So it might be good to take a field trip
up there.
up to
To see
National
that,
Life, and we
yeah.
have time this week,
Yeah, that'd be great.
like tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah. Oh, look at her. She's like, thanks for giving me the heads up.
Well, just look at- I'm just looking.
No, but I mean, am I
You know?
wrong? Or is
I
that
think
just
that-
premature?
I think in general, I think the logic part of you are seeing space utilization that would telework. I- Is that and so we have to go to that base. You can't apply a general across that you expect to see so many in a building because it depends on what program's there, who they're serving and how they're serving. And what is, and I'm just, what is the highest day of teleworking? Is it Tuesdays in that building? Is it Tuesdays and Thursdays? Every building, depending on the department, their teleworking policy is different. But I'm, the environment that you experienced in Waterbury, you would see, in other places as well.
Including National Life.
So I'm serious about a field trip up there. We do have time this week, like tomorrow afternoon or Thursday afternoon.
Serious.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I want to, I'm not I'm not sure if we have to, even though we lease a space, if we have to notify National Life Security, so I will go back. So you want tomorrow afternoon,
Very
and
big
what
effort.
space do you want to see?
We want to see where our state functions are, what we lease. Because AOT used to be up there. They said.
That's right, but no, AOT is a very city place. So there was a fire at National Life. I think you all remember. We did some renovations, we did some consolidation. And I think the Agency of Education was at Berry City Place, and for a number of reasons that was not working out for them. So they did a flop. Agency of Education took over V-Trans space and V-Trans went to Berry City Place.
And ours there.
And A&R is there. Yep.
Is there anything else? I mean, we'd want to see the space that we lease. And if there's any space we lease there that's also empty that we're not using. For that, because there was a push a number of years ago that we purchased National Life. There was a push for that, and that didn't.
$4 million, Madam Chair, Commissioner Tom Torty.
That was a long time ago, so.
Well, we could have bought it for 4 million.
$4 million was a lot of money back then.
It's back in the 90s. Early 2000s.
Isn't that amazing? Maybe it was 5 million. Don't quote me on that. That was an estimate.
But that was back in the late 90s.
I started in 99, so it was probably 2000.
So if that would be a good little field trip.
Love to go there.
Connect the Waterbury complex with this, but we have time tomorrow. We're on the floor at 1. We'll be quick on the floor, and then we're on the floor Thursday at 1. So it probably wouldn't be until 2 o'clock.
So I'm not sure what I want to make sure I have someone available to take you through the lease space. So Eric is on vacation. And I'd like to have one of his staff because property management oversees the leases. And I'm not sure, as your commissioner, exactly what floors we lease and who we have to contact. So is there flexibility with tomorrow afternoon and with Thursday? Okay.
That's also the 2 days we're free.
And
It's no big deal. Eric can come back from vacation.
it's in Italy.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't even, he's probably, no, I think
I
he's.
hope he doesn't have his phone.
I hope he doesn't have, I'm not calling.
No,
So,
I know him enough.
uh,
I mean, it would be good, we can scoot right up there at some point, but it would be good for the committee to see.
remember we used to have the bus that would scoot you up there.
Yes.
And that's very helpful, Commissioner, that you shared that there has to be flexibility in the floors and you're gonna see empty spaces. I get that. So thank you for sharing that too. And I know you're kind of.
And we are truly committed, to you know, as part of, you know, the authority on assignment of space, which sits with the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, we know good planning. We know it's time that we need to align space and look at the future and what the planning is. And all of you, I think, you know, I look around this room knowing the businesses that you're in. That's going to take some time. And Montpelier is, you know, in relation to the flooding that occurred and what buildings can we reuse? Some of those spaces are going to could play into an integral part of that. But we don't know what the answer to that is yet.
Understood. Yeah.
And also, you don't want to limit your office space so tightly that you don't have the flexibility in case something happens at a different building. You may need some swing space.
And I think that's what is the standard, what is the best practice? We used to build for 100% of your FTE and try to give you some wiggle room. So, that's where I was saying, is it 60%? Is it 70%? What's that number today? You know, you have X amount of positions, you have a teleworking policy, depending on the services that you're delivering. What does that look like? Because we don't want to be in a position, I would never at this point recommend that you go to the minimal, because in 5 years, if something changes, all of a sudden this committee's sitting here and you've got to build new office space because we gave it all up. We don't want to be in that position either. So where is that, you know, and I'm just sharing with you these conversations and these thoughts. So we're well aware of it. We're discussing it, we're analyzing it, but we just don't, you know.
But at the risk of beating the dead horse, you can't do that kind of planning if you don't have a projection on how many FTEs you think you're going to need in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years from now, based on what the governor foresees needing to do. If you added a whole new department, like the federal went to, you know, added aerospace.
Right.
Well, now all of a sudden, we've got a totally different, so who would be the right person or organization to show us what that change has been the last 5 years, what they're projecting for the next 5 years?
So it would be your Department of Human Resources, but I think it's important, Representative, and the legislature sets in statute how many FTEs the state of Vermont can have. Connor probably has a better understanding of this than me, but you set a number within statute and you can't go above it.
Understand,
Right, so you have that as your base already.
but you set that number based on a rationale for that number. People come in and say, I need to institute a whole brand new department because electronic warfare in Vermont is all of a sudden going to take off. And we need these kinds of engineers and we need these kinds of people. And then all of a sudden you got to have a building for those people. That kind of projection is where I think you should start, not you. I'm not saying you. That's how an organization has to project how much space they need. And then sometimes they say, well, the FTE only needs 10 square feet because they're telemarketing and they're sharing with somebody else. So, but you got to start with numbers.
Yeah, I think we have, I understand your point.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important. I understand your point, and I think some of that, I know some of that data's there.
Yeah.
And it's just how do you, you know, look at that data today and how do you apply it? So.
And I'm not saying you generate it, somebody else needs to generate that, but you would need to use that to do your longer range forecasts, keeping flexibility. So if we.
But I think, and the point is what in the world of teleworking and the policy, and we're very cognizant of it and we are talking about it. It goes back to, you know, you don't want to strap the state and go to the minimum. Some think we may be I'm going to use this word, it's not my word, oversized or not occupying. I think there are even some people, maybe members here. And that's, you know, and so what's in between?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've been beating this drum for a while, but I think we have too much space, but we do have uncertainty and we have a lot of players involved. And Commissioner, as you said, it's you know, the administration tells you to, pave the river there, you got to do it, right? It's not really your position to say who should be teleworking and who shouldn't. So I think H50 is going to be a positive step in the right direction, looking at the vacant, underutilized space. We just have to stay on top of it. And I feel like we are, like,
Yeah.
asking the right questions, going the right direction, but I don't think we can put it all on you either, Wanda. So, yeah.
No, and I appreciate the conversation, and I'm glad we were able to take what we started about in the beginning of the session, having you see the end and wrapping it up, and that's exactly. But it's important work, and we're committed to. We are working on it.
But maybe H50 ought to have language in there that says the administration will project how many FTEs and part-time people they think they're going to need in coming years. And we know that number is going to change, and we don't know whether they're going to telemarket or whether they're going to be in the office. But that kind of data is what Wanda needs to do the job that we're asking her department to do.
No complaint here, Kevin.
So maybe, I'm not suggesting you should be doing this. I'm just saying that's important information to get the real picture.
So I want to go back to, it's up to each department to determine the telecommuting, whatever term you want to use, for folks to work at home electronically. Each department kind of sets that policy for their.
Based on their programs and services and what they're required to deliver on behalf of the state.
And we heard from the Department of Health that moved to Waterbury from 108 Cherry. We heard when we were there last week that they found that there was more productivity being done by allowing folks to have the flexibility of working at home. Because what was shared with us, where they could work until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then the kids get out of school, they take care of that at home, and then in the evening, they'll log back on and work for a few hours in the evening. So what was implied, at least with the Department of Health, was they're getting more productivity out of their employees than if they physically came in to a facility. Now, I don't know.
I think every program,
Every
Madam
program
Chair,
is
is different, and the service you're providing, to the public, because we exist to serve the public, for the state of Vermont. And, so I'll use my department. My project managers don't go to a construction site at 7 o'clock at night because the construction crew's gone. Their work schedule is focused around the work that they're supporting. And so I think, that's really important. Our fleet program, operates during the hours of operation for state government because that's who we serve and that's what we serve. Our print shop operates during the time of state government, and then we add a second shift during the legislative session because we need to serve our customers. So every department and the programs that they serve is where that is. Every employee has a different experience with teleworking. I'm going to talk about myself. I cannot telework. I will not leave my house, which is not healthy. And then I do get diverted and start doing other things. I stay focused in the office. Some people come to work and choose not to telework because their home environment isn't set up for them to work from home, or they operate better. Other individuals are very productive. So I think I think every individual that you talk to, or groups of individuals, Representative Emmons, they'll tell you, the programs that can telework, there are benefits to them, but there's also benefits to coming into the office. There's also benefits to having conversations with your peers and to brainstorm and to sit down and to work in a group instead of doing it, directly, through Teams meetings. So, I mean, you experienced this during COVID, when all of your meetings were in Teams and we were not coming in, the legislature in here and presenting to you. Your preference is to have us here. So I think you have to, it really depends.
And who oversees that? Is it the Department of HR that really oversees all the policies of all the departments for telecommuting?
So I think that, you have the Commissioner of Human Resources in here. I think there's a standard, I think, and she did an overview on it. She, she sets, the policy is there, the standards are there. We as leaders and managers manage our staff and whatever their teleworking agreement is. And we do agreements that, you're going to telework on making, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and be in the office on Tuesday and Thursday. That's managed by your supervisor or your manager. Some departments have done a department-wide, some do individual. So you really, I'm giving you an overview and I hope that I'm not misstating anything for the record. But that's it and, generally.
No questions?
It's covered.
Anything else? Thank you, Wanda, for coming in, and I think
You're welcome.
Thank you.
we'll be discussing this next section as well.
Right, and we will get back to Phil regarding Wednesday or Thursday for that tour.
I know that's last minute, but time.
Yeah, I just need someone who has access to take you through. There's a level of security. There's badge access, and I need to organize that, and that would typically be Eric. Finance his team can take you on that tour. Okay?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.
Thank you. So that's it for today, folks. So tomorrow,
Go home.
yes, home,
You can go home. We go home and telework.
go home and tell them. So tomorrow morning, we want to leave here by 9:00. So if we can all come up here in the committee room, we'll figure
That'll
out
be good.
cars. To go down. We're on the floor at 1:00, but if you can get in here, because it'd be good to leave around 9. And go from there.